Coming up today on the Nick Craig Show, the Democrat governor of New Jersey has made a pretty surprising announcement. Thousands of individuals illegally registered to vote in the state of New Jersey. Public confidence continues to erode in our election system. We'll have all the details coming up. And a good Wednesday morning to you. Welcome into the Nick Craig Show, streaming live this morning on YouTube, Rumble, X, and Facebook. Don't forget that you can take the show with you 24/7 on demand. It is real simple and totally free to do so. Just head on over to your favorite podcast app, search for the Nick Craig Show, tap the subscribe or follow button, and you'll take a new program with you each and every weekday morning. You can also listen online by visiting the website, nickcraig.com. Our program this morning brought to you by Melissa Gott and the team over at the Law Group here in Wilmington. For any legal questions or challenges, lawgroupnc.com. We'll hear more from them coming up a little bit later on in the program this morning. There is inherently a level of distrust as it relates to government. Whether you are a conservative or a liberal or somewhere in the middle, and that's not to say that you don't trust government at all, but overall, I think it is fair to say, and there's pretty strong data that backs up the idea that people genuinely are distrustful of government. And that's in large part due to the fact that government often does not give you the whole story. Government often does things behind the scenes with huge lacks in transparency. And so with that, over time, people start to lose trust. People start to question what they are being told. One of the things that I think has been a huge misstep by those on the political left over the last 5 to 10 years has been the discussion over voting in the United States. Now, let me start off by saying this. Let me get this right out here in the public. Let me make sure I'm as clear as I can be. The purpose of the conversation today and what we're going to be talking about, I am not here to say that there is widespread voter fraud to the point that elections are being impacted all over the United States. I have not seen evidence of that. I am not going to make up information or provide quote unquote evidence that that is taking place. That is not the premise of the program today. But the left has made a grave mistake when anybody questions anomalies, of which there are plenty of examples of anomalies in elections. God forbid you question and say, that doesn't look right. That doesn't seem accurate. Wait, what happened? This all happened in the middle of the night. All these votes came in for one candidate or the other. Whenever you question that, whenever you draw some concern to a problem like that, you are called an election denier and you are called a conspiracy theorist. We have seen this now for the better part of 10 years. And you are told that our voting systems, that our election systems, that our balloting here in the United States is safe and secure, and there is nothing and nobody that has access to them, and there is not individuals that are using the election system in the United States to vote illegally. It is a zero, you can't even start the conversation. You bring up some of these questions, you bring up some of these anomalies, you bring up some of these concerns, and the immediate reaction is, you're crazy. You're nuts. You're pedaling down a dangerous road of conspiracy and made-up fallacies about what's going on with our election system. That is what Democrats have been purporting for 10 years. And there's a huge and grave problem with that, because public trust is very difficult to build. It's very difficult to build, and it's also very difficult to rebuild. And so when people are repeatedly told for years, decades in some cases, that illegal voting isn't happening, that there are people in the United States that are A, not supposed to be here, and B, voting. When you're told that literally never happens. What are you talking about? You're crazy. You're nuts. That has never happened before. And then information comes to light. New information is available. And there are cases where, in fact, that did occur. Well, now your trust is eroded. And you begin to question everything that you've been told. That is why it is so damaging to make these claims and come out in public and say, there's no problem here. How dare you question this system? It's the most secure thing that has ever existed. We've got a major story this week out of the state of New Jersey, where the Democrat governor there in Mikie Sherrill has admitted that a, quote, software error, end quote, in the state's motor vehicle registration system. The DMV is responsible in the vast majority of the states for helping individuals register to vote when they're getting a license, allowed thousands of non-citizens to register to vote, and that 400 of them voted illegally in the state's elections since 2023. And you might say, and of course the left is already saying, Nick, 400, it's not a big deal. Now, in the grand scheme of things, there might be some accuracy to that. You might say, oh, well, 400, it's not the end of the world. Okay, fine. I'm not even going to argue that point. That's fine, even though it's not, but that's fine. 400 is a fine number. But when you've spent a decade saying that this has never happened, when you have spent a decade saying anybody that questions whether people are voting illegally or not is a tinfoil hat conspiracy theorist, and then the Democrat governor of New Jersey says, hey, there's thousands of non-citizens registered to vote, and 400 of them have actually voted, then everything that you've said about voting, I now no longer believe. And that's the problem with these statements. That's the issue that gets created when you are unwilling to dialogue on an important issue. And that's exactly where the Democrat Party is right now. They have been unwilling to dialogue on this question over election integrity, on this question of election security now for the better part of a decade. And they want to shut you down and shut you up any time you raise a concern, anytime you raise a question, anytime you see something that doesn't look right. You are an outcast. You are pushed to the side. You are out of control. You are destroying our democracy. You are tearing at the fabric of the founding of this nation by questioning our election system. How dare you do that? Because there's never been and there will never be any evidence of somebody voting illegally in the United States. Of course, until the New Jersey governor comes out this week and says, whoops, a little bit of a software error, a little bit of a software glitch that accidentally, quote unquote, wink, wink, nod, nod, allowed thousands of individuals to register to vote and hundreds illegally in the United States, some, others non-citizens who, of course, if you are in the U.S., even legally on a green card or a visa, you cannot vote because you are not a U.S. citizen. Therefore, you do not have the ability or the right to cast a vote in a U.S. election. And so when a Democrat governor of New Jersey comes out and says this, it puts me, and I think a lot of other people, in this very precarious situation where we have been told for the better part of a decade that this stuff is fantasy, that this stuff is just crazy right-wing rhetoric with no evidence to back it up, with no data to prove that any of this has ever happened. And now a Democrat is telling us publicly, and I'll read through a very lengthy social media post by the New Jersey governor here in just a couple of minutes saying, hey, this is happening. It says it's a software error, a software glitch, which I think is up for debate as well. But now I have to question all of it because I was told that this couldn't happen. I have been told for now 10 years, this doesn't happen. It's never happened. And I was pushed to the side for bringing up these concerns, for bringing up these questions, for asking, can we really be sure that this system is working in an appropriate manner? Are there the proper safeguards and checks in place to make sure those that are not either legally in the United States or not U.S. citizens, making sure that there is not a process, not a pathway for those individuals to vote. It completely destroys all trust in these government systems. Completely destroys it. Takes a freaking sledgehammer to it when this information comes out. Very, very damning situation. We are talking about a new announcement from the Democrat governor of New Jersey in Mikie Sherrill after Democrats for the last 10 years have attempted to shut anybody up that has brought up any concerns about election integrity in the United States. Anybody that has questioned and asked, are we sure that our voting systems are as safe and secure as can be? Are we sure that our voting systems are easy for those that are citizens and are able to vote, and it's complicated and challenging for those that want to cheat, that do not have the ability to vote in the United States because they're either illegally in the country or they're a non-U.S. citizen. This is a very damaging story for those on the political left that have been pushing this narrative. Let's go to the announcement. The governor posting on social media this week, quote, "Last week, I learned that a serious software error in New Jersey's motor vehicle system led to the registration of roughly 6,600 people who indicated they were not U.S. citizens between June 2023 and June 2024. Almost 3 years prior to me taking office, which is in fact true, and I'm not blaming the New Jersey governor for this. These individuals answered no when asked on a keypad whether they were a U.S. citizen when applying for a driver's license and identification cards, but through no fault of their own, the system registered them anyway. Here's the problem. I read this first paragraph from the New Jersey governor. I don't know the New Jersey governor. I know what her politics are. But again, as I mentioned in the last segment, when you have spent as a political party, of which the governor of New Jersey is part of, the Democrat Party, when you have spent 10 years telling me and everybody else across the United States that we're off our rockers and totally insane if we question illegal voting in the United States, and then come out and say, well, these 6,600 people were registered, it was a software glitch, no fault of their own. I have a hard time believing that. That's the issue with government trust. That's the problem that gets created when you make these blanket statements, very serious blanket statements like nobody has ever voted illegally in the United States, and then you announce, well, actually 6,600 people were illegally registered and hundreds of them voted. I now have to question, well, these individuals, did they actually answer no on a keypad when they were asked whether they were U.S. citizens? Did they actually answer this, or were they answering yes and the system failed to screen them? Were these workers at New Jersey's Department of Motor Vehicle that were giving these individuals the right to vote? I don't know, but the trust has been eroded. I don't trust now what I'm seeing out of the state of New Jersey, and it's not just a Jersey issue. It's all across the United States because of these broad claims. So I don't have any evidence to back up my claim or I'm not even making a claim, but I don't have any evidence to say that, oh, the governor's wrong, but the trust has been eroded. I now feel like I have to question everything as it relates to elections and election security across the United States because I was lied to. I questioned, I brought up concerns, and I was slapped down and told, no, can't do it. Not allowed. You're nuts. You're crazy. Get out of here. What are you doing? Yet, it, in fact, was happening. Back to the statement from the New Jersey governor. This happened under the previous administration, and upon learning this information, I immediately ordered my chief counsel to launch an investigation to get to the bottom of what occurred. I also ordered the removal of any residents from our voter rolls who were erroneously added between June of 2023 and June of 2024. The new the new MVC administrator that I appointed has begun the process of replacing the vendor responsible for administering the system. Our preliminary analysis shows that fewer than 400 individuals who were newly registered for the first time because of the error voted. They were registered as Democrats, Republicans, and unaffiliated voters and were scattered across the state. The New Jersey governor wants to go on and say, "I want to underscore how seriously I take this matter. As a military veteran who swore an oath to defend our Constitution, and as a former federal prosecutor, I believe the integrity of our elections is fundamental to our democracy. I am appalled by this reckless failure that allowed this to happen and the lack of transparency shown by those in charge at the time. This failure didn't occur under my watch, but accountability starts now. I am taking action to prevent anything like this from occurring in the future and making sure those responsible are held accountable." As the Trump administration tries to weaponize elections for political gain, I am ensuring we protect our elections. Isn't that rich? So let me make sure I understand this here. I'm a simple man, so I sometimes got to dumb some stuff down here for me. Let me make sure I'm understanding this. The state of New Jersey and their DMV system illegally registered 6,600 people. 400 of them voted, and it is the Trump administration that is trying to weaponize elections for political gain. Explain to me how that equals out. It wasn't Donald Trump. It wasn't the Trump administration that gave the green light for the state of New Jersey to register 6,600 people that are non-citizens. And if you would look at the time frame, Joe Biden was in the Oval Office when this was happening. Donald Trump was a private citizen. He was, sure, running for president, running for re-election, but he was not a sitting U.S. official in between June of 2023 and June of 2024. And so, you listen to the beginning, or as I read through the beginning of this statement, you might think to yourself, like, wow, this New Jersey governor seems like, this sounds good. She's admitting responsibility, saying, hey, this was done under the previous admin. While I wasn't personally responsible for it, my team wasn't personally responsible for it, I'm going to take accountability. I'm going to take action on this. I've instructed people around me and other leaders in the state to do a full investigation into this. We're going to toss this vendor to the side and get somebody else new in here. It sounds somewhat reasonable. It sounds like what you would hope to hear from somebody when this news and when this information comes to light. But then as you get into the, the fourth paragraph, as the Trump administration tries to weaponize elections for political gain, all of that goes away. All of this just evaporates because the whole point of this post is to slam dunk the Trump administration. The whole point of this post is to claim that Donald Trump somehow is doing something wrong when the state of New Jersey, and by the way, many others, as we learned last week in the president's address to the nation, states themselves are not being good stewards of their voter rolls. They are making sure, or in this case, not making sure that there are proper systems and proper vetting in place to make sure that those that do not have the right to vote, because they're either A, illegally in the country, B, non-citizens, or C, have had their right to vote taken away from them, and in large part due to some sort of felony conviction, they are making sure that they are not making sure there are systems in place so that can't happen. And somehow, because of the DMV failure in the state of New Jersey, it is Donald Trump who is weaponizing elections for political gain. We'll get into more of this coming up here in just a couple of minutes. Before that, I want to tell you about the law group here in Wilmington. Thank Melissa Gott and her team for their continued support of the program, and remind you that when legal challenges arise, put your trust in the law group right here in Wilmington. Since 2003, Melissa Gott and her team of experienced attorneys have provided high-quality, affordable legal services across eastern North Carolina. Whether you're facing a divorce, navigating a real estate transaction, or maybe you're in a position where you need a strong defense, no matter the issue, the law group has your back. Their dedicated team ensures your questions are answered and issues are resolved as quickly as possible. They're located in downtown Wilmington and just a phone call away at 910-251-6088, or you can visit them online at lawgroupnc.com. They've got a great website. It includes a blog. You can read more about Melissa and her team, all the links and information to their social media, all of that, lawgroupnc.com. It's the Law Group, experience and dedication you can rely on. We appreciate their continued support here of the Nick Craig Show. Well, as we are finding out, nothing to see here as it relates to illegal voting in the United States. We'll continue with the conversation coming up after this as the Nick Craig Show continues, streaming live this Wednesday morning, 7 a.m., YouTube, Rumble, X, Facebook, and always available 24/7 in your favorite podcast app. And welcome back to the Nick Craig Show. Thanks for spending some time with us here on this Wednesday. And all I'm going to say is I'm incredibly frustrated. I want to trust government. Now, that's not to say that I want to have that I have blanket trust in government, but I want to trust the government. And it's not even just government in general. Somebody tells you they're going to do something, you want to trust them. I think human nature says we trust people. We want to trust people. Now, as an intelligent individual, as you are listening to this program, of course, great taste in your political commentary, you only have that trust when it has been proven that the individuals that are telling you something, giving you information, that those individuals are deemed trustworthy. And that's what I'm frustrated about. I'm not one of these people that sits out here and says, I hate the government. I hate everything about the government. I don't want to trust the government. No, I want to. But unfortunately, after, in this case, talking about election integrity and election security, I no longer can. And that really frustrates me. And I know that frustrates many of you because you don't want to have to question every single time a government official opens their mouth. You don't want to have to sit back and go, am I being fed a line of lies? Am I being completely misled and lied to about what's going on? But that is unfortunately the situation that has been created not by me, not by you, but by the government entities that, of course, will slam you when you question what they say. They are the ones that have eroded the trust. They are the ones that have consistently lied to people in their states and their municipalities and in the United States as a whole, that have eroded that trust to the point where now I feel like I have to question everything. It's not my fault. If somebody tells me they're going to do something over and over again, and I trust them and they don't do it over and over again, human nature says, well, this is probably not a trustworthy person. This is somebody that I can't really count on. This is somebody that I'm not going to put all of my trust into because they've proven to me they can't do it. And so that's exactly the situation that's unfolding in the state of New Jersey as the governor this week announced that more than 6,600 people were registered in error through the DMV system in the state of New Jersey, and that 400 of those individuals illegally voted in elections over the last couple of years. And this is, of course, after the Democrat Party has spent the better part of a decade telling me and telling you that, God forbid, you question our elections. God forbid you question the integrity of our elections. You're a crazy right-wing radical conspiracy theorist that is trying to undermine the United States of America. Don't look over here and see that it's actually happening, that it was actually going on. So reading through some of the statement here from the New Jersey governor, it seems in the first couple of paragraphs, I'm accepting responsibility. This didn't happen under my watch. Nevertheless, the buck stops here. I've instructed my top guys, my top people to look at this. We're going to hold the vendor accountable. And then it goes into turning into this is somehow Donald Trump's fault. Back to the New Jersey governor. As the Trump administration tries to weaponize elections for political gain, I am ensuring we protect our elections. Let me be clear. Donald Trump has zero credibility on the issue of election integrity. For more than 10 years, he has worked to undermine Americans' faith in our elections by spreading lies about legitimate election results, attempting to overturn a free and fair elections, encouraging an attack on our Capitol when he couldn't accept the will of the voters, and defunded election security at the federal level. The difference is simple. When we find a problem, we don't hide it, deny it, or invent conspiracies. We investigate it, we fix it, we tell the public that's what accountability and good governance looks like, and that's exactly what my administration is doing. New Jerseyans should have confidence that every eligible citizen can vote, every lawful vote will be counted, and every reasonable step will be taken to protect the integrity of our elections. That's my responsibility, and it's one I will never stop fighting to uphold. So again, these actions happening in the state of New Jersey under a Democrat governor, and it's Donald Trump's fault for what? Calling this out? It's Donald Trump's fault that the DMV in the state of New Jersey did not have either a proper system, a proper vendor, or any sort of checks and balances in place to make sure those that do not have the right to vote could not register. I fail to understand how this is the administration's fault. This is solely at the feet of the Democrat Party. Had they been willing to engage in legitimate discussion about election integrity over the last decade, we probably wouldn't be at this point. But because they were so quick to shut everybody down that brought anything up, because they were so quick to dismiss any sort of criticism or any sort of questions as it relates to elections, election integrity, or election security, they have put the American people in this position. And I just want to go back to the address that the president made to the nation last week. Here was his opening, just real quick, right out of the president's mouth. This is what he actually said.
Because no country can be great without fair and honest elections. You have to trust your country, because if there can be no trust, there can be no greatness. And that's very simple. No trust, no greatness. For many years, I've called for bold, swift, and decisive action to protect the integrity of America's elections. Every American deserves to know that when they cast their vote, that vote will be counted accurately in a system, and that is to make that system secure. One where cheating and interference are not just difficult, but virtually impossible. Unfortunately, the system we have today falls catastrophically short of that standard.
And it obviously does fall catastrophically short. New Jersey was registering thousands of individuals who were not U.S. citizens to vote. I mean, I can't think of a more catastrophic failure than that. The system is supposed to be pretty, I would assume, and I guess that, that makes me the fool, that makes me the idiot in this case. If somebody's registering to vote, that it is verified that they're a citizen. But in the state of New Jersey, that wasn't a problem. I would call that a catastrophic failure. You are allowing individuals who do not have the legal right to vote to not only register to vote, but then vote. Can you think of anything more, a larger catastrophe than that? The system itself is supposed to make sure people can't vote, that, of course, are not eligible to do so. And that system obviously failed. More than 6,600 people illegally registered in the state of New Jersey, more than 400 of them, or around 400 of them, actually voting in elections, nullifying the votes of legal, law-abiding U.S. citizens and residents of the state of New Jersey. You went into a ballot box and voted for candidates, and somebody else who did not and should not have had the right to vote went in, and if they voted for the opposite candidates of you, they nullified your vote. I can only make this as simple as possible. Your vote literally did not count, did not matter, because it was nullified, not by somebody who has the right to vote, but by somebody that did not. So for 400 people in the state of New Jersey, their votes were nullified. Why even bother getting out of bed on election day? What was the point of even getting out there and voting? That's the problem. That's the issue. And so for the New Jersey governor to go down this diatribe of how it's the federal government's fault and it's the Republicans and Donald Trump that are trying to cast aspersions on our election system. I mean, she wake up yesterday? She not remember what went on in 2016? How the first 2 years of the Trump administration were marred with Donald Trump didn't actually win. It was the Russians, of course. You'll remember back to Russiagate. Well, our memories and our attention span isn't that short. That it was the Russians and Vladimir Putin that got Donald Trump into the Oval Office in 2016. It's not because Hillary Clinton was a terrible candidate. It's not because the Democrat Party ran on nothing in 2016. It was Vladimir Putin and the Russian government that got Donald Trump into the Oval Office. This is how public trust is eroded. This is how the government system that you and I know and exists in front of us right now begins to collapse. Because when people cannot trust our election system, as you just heard from the president, and based on what we see out of New Jersey, I think that's a fair assessment to make. When you can't trust that system, it begins to crumble. It begins to show cracks. And that is a very dangerous spot for any free nation to be. And unfortunately, it appears that's the way that we're trending here in the United States. I don't say that lightly. I don't say that with a smile on my face. For those watching the video version of the show, I'm not smiling. That doesn't make me happy. I'm not jumping for joy that this is a huge win. No, it's not. This is an awful story. It's an awful situation. You had legitimate U.S. residents or U.S. citizens, in the state of New Jersey that had their votes nullified by individuals who weren't allowed to vote. There's nothing exciting about this. There's nothing happy about this. Nothing. Zero. Miserable spot to be in for the United States. In rounding out this discussion on election integrity, talking about the trust in our government systems, the big news this week, the New Jersey governor and Mikie Sherrill has admitted a software error in the state's DMV system allowed more than 6,600 non-citizens to register to vote in elections in the state of New Jersey between June of 23 and June of 2024. 400 of those individuals went on to actually vote in those elections. And of course, she turned it into a discussion and a conversation that it is in fact the Trump administration. It is in fact Donald Trump that is responsible for this. Not the failure of the New Jersey government, not the failure of Democrat leadership in that state, but in fact Donald Trump that caused this to happen. Senator Andy Kim, the Democrat from New Jersey, was on MSNBC or MS Now last night to talk about this, was questioned about some of this, and of course said, again, nothing to see here. This isn't a big problem. Take a listen.
The governor of your state, Mikie Sherrill, announcing that under previous administration, actually, this happened back in 2023, there had been a kind of glitch in software for the automatic voter registration through the state's Department of Motor Vehicles. Accidentally shunted about 6,000 non-citizens onto the voter rolls as citizens, 6,600. Of those, there were about 400 non-citizens who've cast votes in elections across several elections. Now, we should note that this is out of like millions and millions of New Jerseyans. So
I got to stop this. That's the problem right there. This is the issue. You said for years, decades, this isn't happening. This hasn't happened. This is a crazy goose chase that you're on. This is a crazy conspiracy theory. This is nuts. You're insane if you think this is happening. And then there's the justification that I was just talking about. Well, it was only 400 people. You can't say this has never happened before. It's not possible. And then go, well, it actually can happen. It did happen, but it was only 400 people. That's the cover on this. That is the smoke and mirrors that has been created on this. It's only 400 people. Who cares? I saw the same reaction here in North Carolina. There's an individual by the name of Dennis Bouchard who lives in southeastern North Carolina, is a Canadian national, is legally in the United States, but is not a U.S. citizen, who was just indicted, found guilty on illegally voting in North Carolina. And Democrats will say, oh, it's not widespread. I don't care if it's widespread or not. One individual voting in a U.S. election that is not eligible to do so is too many. For anybody in southeastern North Carolina, either Pender or New Hanover County, where Dennis Bouchard was voting as a Democrat, he bragged to his coworkers about voting against Republicans. Your vote was nullified. Your vote did not count because a Canadian national who was not and is not eligible to vote cast a vote in that election. That's the problem. But now you've got to listen to this joker over on MSNBC go, oh, well, it's only 400 people. Chris Hayes, who seemingly looks more like a woman every single time he comes on television. I don't know what he's going on there. Maybe hopped up on some sort of a trans syrup, talking about how, it's only a couple hundred people. Just ignore the problem.
This is still tiny. But it does represent a pretty big screw up and probably the largest breach of this kind that I could ever cover. What was your reaction to seeing that news today?
Yeah, I heard about it for the first time today as well. And I have to say, look, this is unacceptable. And this needs to be fixed immediately, and people need to be held accountable for that, especially if they've known this since it's happened a couple years ago. So yes, when there are mistakes, when there are things that are broken, we need to fix it. But we also need to make sure that we're looking at the problems in the right size, that this is not akin to what Donald Trump was talking about. Yes, this is something that needs fixing, but it's not this widespread systemic problem that Trump has been using and weaponizing to try to push forward a very extreme agenda when it comes to deterring voters and other things that he's been trying to push on with his conspiracy theories and delusions about winning the 2020 election. But yes, it's certainly something that we need to fix. And I've been pushing to make sure that we're upgrading our voter equipment and ballots all across the country. We need to make sure that we're protecting it from cybersecurity and other issues like that. So those are things we need to make sure we're pushing hard on.
It's still a conspiracy theory. Still. You just heard it straight out of the mouth of Senator Andy Kim from New Jersey. Donald Trump's wild conspiracy theories. So there you go. Doesn't matter. The news is out there. The Democrat governor put out a press release about it, hosted a press conference about it, said, yeah, this absolutely happened. It's more than 6,600 people illegally registered in the state of New Jersey. In just this one little area, June of 23 to June of 24, 400 of them voted. And it's still a conspiracy theory. It's nuts. These people are in total. I don't even know how to describe it. Are they in shock? Maybe they're trying to now figure out how they message this issue. Total denial of what is going on in front of their very eyes. And then, of course, as I've been saying throughout the entirety of the show today, you bring this up and you're a conspiracy theorist trying to undermine our elections, trying to rip through the thread of our society. Why? Because you're questioning what's going on? Because you're asking a legitimate question of, hey, are we sure that this is all being done properly? Are we sure that this is being conducted in a legitimate manner? Are we sure that there's the proper amounts of checks and balances in these systems? How dare you question the integrity of our elections? Because it was only 400 people. It's not, quote, widespread. What does that mean? How many people would it have to be widespread? Just kind of looking at some examples here in North Carolina, and I know that obviously we're talking about the state of New Jersey, but just to really hone in on how important some of this stuff is and how small some of the margins are on these elections, I think it's important for folks to remember some recent statewide elections that we've had here in the state of North Carolina. You go back to the 2020 election, a major race here in North Carolina for the United States Supreme Court, which pitted Sherry Beasley versus Paul Newby. Paul Newby, the Republican, Sherry Beasley, the Democrat in this race. This was a statewide election that had more than more than 6 million votes in this contest across the state of North Carolina. More than 6 million people voted in this North Carolina Supreme Court race. Do you know what the final margin was on that election out of more than 6 million votes cast across the state? 401 votes in a contest with 6 million votes. 401 was the difference. That number is eerily similar to what we've been talking about in the state of New Jersey, where 6,600 people were registered and more than 400 of them voted. So, is this a problem? What defines widespread? When you've got statewide elections that are decided by just a couple of hundred votes, and then, of course, you dig down into smaller elections for a state legislature, for a county commission, for a school board race, a town council, a city council. In some cases, the margins in those contests, just a handful of votes, 20, 30, 40 votes in some of these contests. And so what is the definition of widespread? I will make this point as clearly as I possibly can. If there is any illegal vote, just even one that takes place in a contest, that is one too many. That is a vote that is being taken away from a legal, law-abiding U.S. citizen that has the right to vote by somebody who does not and should not have that right. The Democrats set themselves up for this trap, set up this failure by completely burying their head in the sand on any sort of election integrity questions over the last decade, and now they're having to face the music. Totally avoidable, totally preventable. Had they been willing to engage in a legitimate discussion about this stuff and say, yeah, you know what, we should make sure that this is the case. But no, because Republicans were leading the charge on this, because Republicans said, hey, let's make sure that all this is operating appropriately. Oh, no, it's a conspiracy theory. Oh, no, you don't know what you're talking about. Oh, my God, you're trying to sow doubt into our election system. How freaking dare you? But hey, don't look over here. Only 6,600 people registered. Only 400 votes, as Chris Hayes said on MSNBC or MS Now, whatever the hell it's called. It's not widespread. That's not that big of an issue. It's not that big of a deal. Just go look at something else. Donald Trump. Yeah, it's his fault. He did this. What a clown show that the Democrat Party has once again created for themselves. No surprise there at all. We'll keep an eye on the potential fallout in the state of New Jersey as any other relevant news comes to the forefront. We'll bring it to you right here on the Nick Craig Show. All right, that's going to do it for a Wednesday edition. Thanks to the Law Group here in Wilmington for their continued support. LawGroupNC.com or 910-251-6088. The Nick Craig Show streams live weekday mornings, 7 a.m., YouTube, Rumble, X, Facebook. Is also available 24/7 in your favorite podcast app and is heard weeknights, 9 to 10 on WBT Radio in Charlotte. Enjoy your Wednesday. We'll do it again tomorrow morning right here on The Nick Craig Show.